Okay. You know what I'm talking about. Just let me know if you wanna go to that green. I got a lot of nice girls. I'm racing.
Good run in. Ladies and gents, for those that are over there, please feel free to come forward. You may not hear too much standing over there with the wind blowing that way. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ian Bull, and I welcome you all here today to the Mooroopna Cemetery as we gather together to say our goodbyes and lay to rest Roderick James Quinlan, or as most of you will know him as Rod, or simply Quino. Rod's passing at his home in Mooroopna at the age of 63 on the 5th of July 2020 was not only extremely sad and sudden, but also totally unexpected. Understandably, for his family and those closest to him, they are struggling to comprehend, and they're looking for answers as to how somebody who gave so much and did so much for others could suddenly leave this earth and this world the way that he has. They also have to face the prospect of continuing on with their lives without Rod's physical presence. I'd like to start the service today by extending my sincere condolences to Rod's children, Matthew, Joanne and Samantha, and to their families, to his sister Sue and his second family, his mates at Downer Group. I know that you're very important to Rod and the family. And I'm certain that each and every one of you here today will miss Rod greatly. Rod's sudden and tragic passing is a stark and tragic reminder of the uncertainty of life the randomness of our own individual lives, the need to embrace life for what it is, and to be thankful for every waking moment that we have on this earth. Rod's family would be justified in feeling shortchanged and cheated, not just because of the fact that Rod's life ended way too soon, but just as importantly, they'll be saddened and distressed that they didn't have the chance to say the goodbyes to a much-loved father, granddad, and brother. First of all, we have to look at where we're going from here. How do we respond to the sadness and tragedy of Rod's passing? And how do we process the enormity of what's happened? Well, first of all, you should feel comfortable in expressing your emotions in whichever way you wish. You can shed a single tear or as many tears as you like, or you can rejoice in the knowledge and pleasure that you had the opportunity of sharing your life with Rod. It is also appropriate to smile as you remember and give thanks for Rod's life, to appreciate all the things that Rod did, the things that he said that made you laugh, the things that he did that made you cry, and the things that he did or said that may have made you very, very cranky. This is how you will remember Rod, for that is what you are left with. Memories, precious memories, and an appreciation for the legacy that Rod leaves behind. Today we'll give thanks, we will remember, we will appreciate, and we'll also celebrate. Even though Rod has left our side in the physical sense, we do have a lot to celebrate and we have a lot to be thankful for. The biggest mystery of human life on this earth, and mostly the unknowns of the journey that each of us will take. And from birth, we are subjected to a myriad of influences, challenges, opportunities lost and opportunities taken, random meeting and events which will shape and ultimately influence our own lives. But above all, the one question we all have that nobody knows the answer to is how long will our own journeys on this earth last, and in what circumstances will they end? I'm not certain though that this is something that would really want to know the answer to, even if we had the opportunity, which of course we don't. But for all of us who now have to accept the sadness of Rod's passing, it is now up to us to reflect upon his life and consider his influence and certainly what he achieved in his lifetime. But we should not judge or value a life lived solely in terms of the years spent on this earth, but how that person lived their life. So from this day forward, in the days, weeks, months, and even the years to come, you'll have the opportunity to reflect and make your own assessment of Rod's life, and I'm certain that those assessments will be very, very positive. Although I'd never met Rod, what I did learn about him from his children was that he was kind and loving, hard but fair, was stubborn but certainly and definitely soft on the inside when it came to his grandchildren, and that he also cared deeply for his family and friends. In terms of his contribution to those around him, his family all agreed that their father always had time for other people and that he would do anything for anybody. And it was these words alone that caught me, and that said a lot about his influence on those around him, his love of family, his workmates, and to his community. And by all accounts, and by any measure, Rod's life was a life well lived, and for that we should all be very pleased and very thankful. In discussions with Rod's children in relation to preparing for this service, my final question to them was simple. What do you think your father would want his funeral service to look like? Their responses came very quick. No fuss, not overly long, and he'd want to end up having a piss up. Rod, we will do our best to honour your life today and respect your wishes. I'd now like to ask Rod's sister Sue to come forward, please, and expand upon Rod's life as she delivers her brother's eulogy on behalf of the family. Thank you, Sue.
Well, I'll upset him straight up because it's a bit long. Nobody ever chooses to write or read a eulogy because it's just too hard. It's just too hard to honour a person's life with a few words. But here I am, and I'd first like to thank Matt, Joe, Sam and Karen for their input. Rod was born to Jean and Austin on the 9th of February 1957. Together we had a great childhood, and yes, because he was my older brother, the normal sibling standover tactics happened. But he was also my protector and my teacher and the keeper of my secrets. We were both taught to swim at a very early age and kept this sport going well into our teens. And during his teenage years, Rod also took up claybird shooting. He started primary school at Gowrie Street in Shepparton. On his first day, he returned to our grandparents' house 3 times. Not because he didn't like school, but because all the other kids were crying and he wasn't learning anything. Soon after that, our parents bought a mixed business in Main Street, Mooroopna, so Rod finished his primary schooling at Mooroopna Primary. After I started school, he drank my milk at first play every day until the scheme stopped. I still don't drink milk. As I said, he was my protector. Rod then went to North Tech in Shepparton before beginning his apprenticeship as a fitter and turner and scale mechanic. He taught me many things, including how to ride bikes, both push bikes and motorbikes. He was allowed to have one. I wasn't, because I was a girl. And he taught me how to drive, and he encouraged me to be fearless and to take on any new challenges. One of the many dares he threw my way in our later teenage years, and one of the more memorable ones, was daring me to water ski down a channel behind his bike, just down the road in Untmona. It ended well, thankfully. As a family, we didn't regularly go on holiday because of Mum and Dad's business, but we did have one significant trip to Queensland. During that trip, on a morning swim with Mum, we got caught in a rip, and I panicked, but he got me to shore while calling for help for our mum, who fortunately was rescued by an early morning walker. In our early teens, after they sold the shop, our parents bought a caravan, and then we spent most school holidays at Lake Epilogue learning to ski and behaving, upon reflection, recklessly in other people's boats and on Rod's bike. Growing up, we had a very close relationship with our local cousins. Rod was also incredibly protective of his 3 younger cousins, and they saw him as a big brother and said that he always made them feel safe. Rod got his first tattoo when we were living in Joseph Street. He made me promise not to tell Mum and Dad. But they knew, and they made him suffer a few weeks of having to cover it up in sweltering summer heat before it all came out. A lover of all things mechanical, Rod cared for and loved all his cars and bikes from an early age. He also loved books and music and attended the inaugural Sunbury Music Festival. Rod and Karen met in Melbourne in 1980 through his best friend Clarkie. Rod was working at the Savage River mines in Tasmania at the time, and soon after went to Papua New Guinea for work. Apparently he had a 4 a.m. flight out to PNG and slept in, so drove 100 miles per hour down Bell Street with Karen hanging on for dear life to make his plane on time. When Rod returned from PNG, he and Karen lived in Melbourne before they both moved back to Savage River. While in Tassie, Rod had a Tirana that he named Terry, and one of Terry Tirana's most memorable trips was when Rod had a toothache and drove from Burnie to Hobart in about 45 minutes, a trip that should take more than double that time. Another one of Rod's attempts at setting a land speed record. Apparently Rod's proposal to Karen when she was pregnant was a classic better get married now. Obviously a hopeless romantic. Matthew James was born on the 17th of September 1982. Rod and Karen married on the 12th of February 1983 at the Shepparton Lake, and the reception was at the Royal. It was at the time our dad's local, but it became Rod's as well. Joanne Renee followed not long after on the 10th of March 1984. Rod and Karen had moved to Maribna just before Joe was born, buying their first home at number 2 Sun Court. They bought their red Land Cruiser the same year, which ended up taking the family on many of their holidays and creating countless great memories. During this time, Rod worked as a street sweeper, driver, and enjoyed spending time shooting with Cole Dryden and others. On the 29th of August 1988, Samantha Jane was born. Rod started working for Ready Mix Asphalt in '89. Funnily enough, he was fired from there in the beginning, but went and spoke to Joe Alessi again and got his job back. Rod ended up working for that company with various takeovers and name changes for 30 plus years. Apparently, many of the plant's equipment would only come to life at his hands. In 1992, Rod and Karen built their second home at Excelsior Avenue. While the house was being built, the two of them and the 3 kids lived in 2 caravans in the backyard. Rod and Karen's caravan came with its own pet mouse that loved to perform acrobatics in the middle of the night, much to Karen's disgust and Rod's amusement. Rod's proudest feature of their newly built home was his bar in the lounge room. He spent a lot of time agonising over getting the bar at the perfect leaning height. At this time, Rod began doing seasonal work at the cannery, working 2 jobs and living off 3 to 4 hours of sleep for 5 months of the year. He did this for close to 20 years, which was obviously hard on everyone, but he did it for his family. One of Rod's happier moments was buying his first Harley, unbeknown to Karen. Karen came home from work to Rod with a huge grin on his face, standing at the back door saying, "I've got something to show you." Karen was expecting there to be a new ride-on mower, which is all Rod was supposed to buy, but she did end up getting all the garden landscaping sorted from that little stunt. In 1998, Rod had an accident at work and rolled the truck he was driving. He was very lucky to survive and fortunately managed to squeeze out of a tiny window to safety. After 19 years of marriage, Rod and Karen separated in 2000, with Rod, Matt and Joe moving to Emma Street in 2001. Later that year, Rod crashed his Harley, and I'm sure a lot of you will remember. He shattered his wrist and ankle and ended up off work recuperating for 6 months. In 2003, Rod became granddad for the first time to Manny, then twice more in 2010 to Scarlett and Sonny, and lastly in 2012 to Annabelle. All 4 of his grandchildren had him wrapped around their little fingers, and he loved spending time with them all. Rod had been adding to his tattoo collection his whole life, getting his biggest one that covered his whole back in the early 2000s. Apparently old habits die hard, and Rod hid that one from our parents forever. Matt, Joe and Sam all saw Rod jump up from his stool at the coffee table countless times when Jen and Austin pulled into the driveway to put a shirt on to hide the tat from them. Rod and Clarkie started their biannual holiday trips in 2004, riding their Harleys up to Port Douglas. Rod flew Matt up to meet them there for the second trip in 2006, with their last Port Douglas trip being 2008. They stepped it up a notch in 2009 and rode around Australia, taking 11 weeks for the trip. In 2012, they went on the trip of a lifetime and flew to America to ride Harleys around 10 different states and go to Sturgis Bike Rally. With ageing parents, Rod, being local, did most of the heavy lifting. His care and love for our mum and dad, while sometimes frustrating, was exceptional. The last years of Rod's life were spent working, spending time with his grandchildren, including watching them play sport on Saturdays. He also took the time to become best mates with his 3 kids. He enjoyed going for rides on Sunday mornings with his mates, and more recently Matt joined them, and going to his church, the pub, where he met with his friends on a Sunday afternoon. Rod often showed a gruff, grumpy, and I will add not so old man persona, but underneath he was a gentle softy, and those of us that knew him and loved him knew how to bring this side out, not that it took much. Emotions have obviously been very raw these last few weeks. This wasn't supposed to happen for at least another 20 years. But, as we know, life isn't a dress rehearsal. There are no do-overs, so going forward, we all need to honour Rod by treating each day as a gift. Gone far too soon, he was much loved and will be sorely missed.
Thank you so much, Sue, for that lovely eulogy. We're now going to hear some special tributes from a number of people. And the first tribute will be from Ray Clark via myself. So, Clarkie, I have your notes. And this is what Clarkie had to say. Quinno was a great mate and a great workmate. We had a great time travelling together. We had good experiences and quite a few hangovers on our travels. We were talking about doing another trip around Australia. It would have taken us twice as long, unfortunately, at this time. I'm going to miss our weekend rides together, mate, with Woody and Kim. You'll be badly missed by everybody. Thank you to Clarkie for those words. I'd now like to ask Rick Cruff, and Rick's Rod's boss at the Downer Group, to come forward and say a few words in memory of his mate. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of Rod, I wrote a poem on behalf of his Downer family. So, bear with me. Ode to Rod. Rod was a work colleague and a very good friend. Rod was a mate on whom we could always depend. We worked with Rod in this industry for near on 30 years. Rod has left our workplace feeling hollow, and he has brought us to tears. Rod was dedicated, diligent, and very hard-working. And we all remember Rod's comments that left us all smirking. Rod lived life to the fullest for his family and friends. And we all know that Rod was way too young for this sudden end. Rod made us laugh. And yes, there were many of times. And come late afternoon, Rod would listen for the sounding of the beer clock chimes. Kids, grandkids, friends, work, beer, and fishing. At least one more day with Rod is what we are all wishing. As I sit in my office listening to the asphalt plant roar, oh, how I hope to see Rod just standing in my door. On Rod's bucket list was returning to Sturgis for the rally, beer, babes, and bikes was right up his alley. Today, as we mourn, support, share, ponder, and cry, I can hear Rod saying, "Carry on. I am riding that Harley in the sky." Goodbye to a great mate and a friend. On this very sad note is where I will end. Rest in peace, Rod.
Thank you so much, Rick, for that wonderful poem. Now I'd like to ask Rod's son, Matthew, to come forward, please, and share some special memories of his father. Thank you, Matt.
This might take a bit. Alright, growing up, Dad and I didn't quite click. He was pretty hard on me, and we just didn't quite have it worked out straight away. That come on later. We clicked later on. Growing up, I was called many names from him. Most of the time it was pretty cheekily bullfed, or something very similar. And for the most part, I got long streak of pelican shit. It was either said cheekily or it was into me. Most of the time later on, I got matey. It was a phone call, "Hey matey." Or it was, I fucked up and it was, "Oh matey." Sorry, I'm going to swear a bit too. But usually if I really messed up, it was "boy," and it sent a shiver down my spine. I remember when he started easing up on me, it was my 18th, and I can't remember who it was, but I was wrestling with one of his mates, and I put him on the ground and sort of looked up, and Dad looked at me, he's like, "Shit, I better start respecting you a little bit." Let's see. Yeah, so when we were kids, he always used to traumatise us with his false teeth trick. It got pretty old quick, but it made a pretty big comeback when the kids come along. Also, what else was there? He did the standard, lock the windows and drop his guts in the car. That was always pretty nasty. Or he'd wind the window down and spit out the window and they'd, "Get out and walk, you bastard." That was pretty standard. We had one trip up to Queensland, and he wasn't very technically minded, so we had the cassette player, and he had ZZ Top and Dire Straits. So once we got out of Sun FM range, ZZ Top come on, A, B, out. Dire Straits in, A, B, out. ZZ Top, A, B, out. So got to Queensland. Dad, can I have the keys? Yeah, yep. So I quickly tuned it in, got back in, so we had the radio for a week. He's like, what's this crap? As soon as we got out, on the whole way home, A, B, A, B. He loved his cars and bikes and all the rest of it, as we all know. And sit down. But they didn't always love him back. He managed to crash all of them. So he had his Kingswood. I don't really know the stories of that, but I think Cole was involved. No? Yeah, wrecked that. Then obviously, very lucky with his truck crash. Lucky to get out of that one. And he crashed his Harley in Moama. So we recently going through his paperwork, we found a couple of notes, and because he was drunk at the time, of course, but he was on private property, so he got out of it. He had to go to court, and he had was it 6 months? 6 months good behaviour, and had his blood alcohol reading on it was 0.194. He kept that one pretty quiet. But probably his funniest crash was his push bike. Him and Uncle Ray had this big grand idea of getting push bikes so they can get to the pub quicker. That lasted one trip. I don't think it got used ever since. I always used to play little games with him just to test him out. Just moving things in his house, or pinch something and just see how long he was pretty onto it. Where's that DVD? Where's this? Where's that? You know, you're onto it. Lost for a moment. Yeah. So. Talking to him on the phone, he'd always finish a conversation like he'd always have to have the last word. It'd always be yep. So he used to fuck with him. He was like, alright, see you, Dad. Alright, yep. And you go, yep. And he wouldn't hang up, but he always wait for you to hang up. He never knew what to do, he'd have him stumped. So when Mum and Dad split up, Mum always used to obviously look after the presents and whatnot, so Dad had to step up to the plate when it was his turn, and he excelled. It was a card, and either cash or if it was a special occasion, it was a gift card, and the writing would be Matt, Rod. And if it was the kids, it was Scarlett, Rod. Dad, they don't know your name, it's Grandad. Nah, it's Rod. It's Rod. It's Rod. So one Father's Day, Dad loves his rum, so he proclaimed. So one Father's Day I rocked around there and I bought a nice bottle of rum and we sat down and he had a glass and he's like, oh, geez, that's all right. He goes, go get a glass. And so we polished that bottle off real quick. Didn't last long at all. Anyway, so he had his wobbly boots on and fell asleep on the couch. So I picked him up and put him into bed. And little did I know that I set a little booby trap on him and shut his door. So he got up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet and lost his bearings. Relieved himself in his room because he couldn't get out. And went back to bed. Rolled up to work on the Monday, and obviously very, very under the weather, and got breath tested and got told to drive home. They didn't drive him home, they let him drive home. So our connection got stronger as I got older. Just frequent catch-ups to the pub, or bike rides, or listening whinging about the fucking plant breaking down, or how many ton he done today and how many he's got to do tomorrow. I don't know how many 300 ton is, but it must be a lot because he's always whinging about it. So when I got my last bike dropped off, I got it delivered to Dad's house just because I knew he'd be more excited to see it than me. So he was there with his phone out, taking photos, a stupid grin on his face. And as soon as he got back to work, showed off all the boys. And so he was pretty excited about it. That was until we went for our first ride. Got out of the first roundabout and overtook him and took off, left him dead. Woody said he had a pretty good big grin on his face when we stopped at the first pub, but I don't think he was too impressed. He straight to the shop the next week, and he had to make this bike go faster because he always had to be the quickest. Yeah, I couldn't really say something too emotional because I wouldn't get through it. And he's not about that either. He worked hard, and that was his way of showing his love, was just through his hard work and trying to provide for us. He always come across as grumpy and tired, but we knew that that was because he was doing his best for us. And we always just tried to avoid him when he was like that. Yeah, when you work ridiculous hours, it's got to be expected. Dad was Dad, and you really couldn't change that, and no, we never wanted to.
Thank you very much, Matt, for sharing those memories of your father. Well done. Now I'd like to ask Rod's grandson, Manny Quinlan, to come forward, please, and share some memories of his grandfather. No show? Okay. Our final presentation will be from Rod's daughter, Samantha, and Sam will share some memories of her father. Thank you.
I've struggled to know what to say today, but I think that it's mainly thank you. Thank you, Dad, for the laughs and the love, for the fights and the tears, for the discipline and for the beers. Thank you for your toughness, but for your soft side too. Mostly just thank you for being you. I'm going to miss our chats, your cheeky smile, and your shit-staring comments. Always making me take the bait. I love you, Dad, and I'm forever grateful that you are mine.
Thank you so much, Sam. And I know how difficult it is to get up in front of all these people and share some memories of someone who's loved so dearly. So well done to you. We're now going to pause for a short period of reflection as we think of the happy times spent with Rod and as we give thanks for his life. And as we pause to reflect, we'll be playing one of Rod's favourite songs. It's called Who'll Stop the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival. As you're listening to the song, please bow your head in remembrance. Thank you. On behalf of Rod's family, I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance here today, and just as importantly for the kind words and expressions of sympathy that have been extended to them at this difficult time. It's very much appreciated. Rod's family would also like to pay special tribute to Clarkey, Rod's best mate, and also to Rick, who was not only a great mate but also Rod's boss, for their ongoing friendship, love and support. So thank you very, very much. At the completion of this burial service, folks, Rod's family would like everybody to stay and share a drink here at the graveside as we say our own cheers to Rod. Ladies and gentlemen, for those that are seated, would you please stand? Thank you. We must accept and learn to live with the fact that, at least in the physical sense, Rod is no longer with us. Yet he's still with us as long as we remember him and as long as we reflect on all of the life lessons that he taught you, the guidance that he gave you, and for the friendship and love that he shared with you. We will see the image of Rod reflected in his children and his grandchildren, and when his family are faced with a difficult dilemma or confront one of those fork in the road moments, they will know what Rod would do and they will know what Rod would say. So in that sense, he will continue to be with you, guiding you and influencing you. Rod will never be lost to you as long as you continue to cherish his memory and give thanks for his life. If you need him, he will be there for you. So just because Rod has passed in the mortal sense, we will love him still. In our hearts and in our minds, Rod remains an important part of our lives. So it's now time to commit Rod's body to the earth. We say a heartfelt thank you to Rod. We acknowledge and honour his life, his commitment to his family and friends, and to anybody who needed his help. We also give thanks for his support, his cheeky sense of humour, his advice, and most importantly, his friendship and his love. Love is what unites us. Love is what strengthens us. And love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation. Those we love never truly love us, as there are things that death cannot touch. I'm going to conclude this afternoon's service with a quote from an unnamed author, although I suspect it may have been Rod himself who wrote it. And this particular reading has been on display in his kitchen, I understand, for many years. And for those that have been at his house, you probably know where this is going. But it's a prophetic, profound, and some might say ironical quote. Others might say it is simply quintessential Rod, but I'll leave that for others to make a comment upon. It reads as follows. Life is not a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways, thoroughly used, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Fuck, what a trip." As we lower the coffin, we're going to hear one of Rod's favourite songs, Wish You Were Here, by Pink Floyd being played, and we're also going to attend to the raising and release of balloons.
you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain? Can you tell it being feel from a cold steel rail, a smile from a veil? Do you think you can tell? Did they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts, hot ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze, cold comfort for change? Did you exchange a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage? How I wish you were here. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl, year after year, running over the same old ground. Have we found the same old fears? Wish you were here.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our service, but please feel free to come forward and sprinkle some gum leaves onto Rod's coffin. And as I said before, please feel free to stay back and share a drink and say cheers to Rod. Thank you very much for coming to today's service. I wish you a good afternoon. Thank you.
It's freezing, isn't it? I'm shivering the whole time. Yeah. You don't want it. You did. Oh, good with that. Yeah, of course you can, bro.
Nice one. Just hope they're a bit more advanced with their medical treatments. Yeah. Yeah. Trying to get audio. I think calling up.
Daddy, how are you, mate?
I'm hoping they're rolling because you've got to have it now over there. Yeah.
Part of it's the shed. The other side of the toilet.
Shouldn't have had those two days in.
Yeah. When did that happen?